Hi, I'm Droolbatz. It's so nice to see you. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2010 horror movie Stalker. I've included a link to watch it for free in the description, so if you're just here for that, go to the description, it's there. For the rest of you who are here for the review, I'm going to be discussing it based on its premise, its production value and artistic choices, and finally, how it compares or contrasts to other films of the genre. I hope you enjoy. Paula is a writer who experienced a taste of extreme success with her first book. It was the first book she wrote and it was immediately on the #1 bestseller list. The problem with that is that she's writing her second book and she's feeling a lot of stress and pressure trying to live up to the standard that she set in her first book. Because she's having trouble producing her writing samples on time, her publisher, her editor or her publisher, sends her to this childhood home where she kind of grew up. It's pretty secluded. It's kind of like a mansion or something. And she says, you know, just go where there's peace and quiet and just let your mind go crazy right while you're out there. Well, unfortunately, Paula is still having trouble producing the results. She had some kind of mental health scare and was in an institution for a little bit, like a few years ago. And there's a tabloid man, but he runs this tabloid and he's really determined on getting the scoop on this new book that she's writing. He wants to see what's up with Paula, why she's taken so long to write this book. So he is just badgering her publisher to give him the details. Paula is trying to dodge this guy and she's really not having very good inspiration when this girl, Linda, shows up at her house in the woods and is like, hey, your publisher sent me, I'm here to like help you get back on track with your book. Linda's very helpful to Paula. Paula will like dictate and Linda will take down the notes. Linda will kind of keep her company when she's experiencing spooky-ish things like the power going out and things like that. And Linda also helps her like make the housekeeper and such leave if they're being too noisy. As this tabloid man starts snooping around more and more, Linda gets more and more aggressive with how she's treating Paula. She starts writing on Paula's laptop and writing over what Paula's written and like writing better stuff, and Paula of course takes offense to that, and she starts getting a lot more rude and aggressive with the groundskeeper and the maid who show up. We're not sure exactly what's going on with Linda, but it's starting to look like somebody is going to get seriously hurt if some action is not taken. What stood out to me the most about this movie's production value was some really interesting camera angles that I saw going on with certain shots of the film. A lot of times, probably you know this, camera angles will just be like either in your face or pretty direct, and if there's like a really weird camera angle or something like in a Stanley Kubrick movie or something, it's kind of meant to put you in the place of the characters feeling like weird and out of sorts, or it's supposed to like convey something. I noticed in Stalker that there were some really weird camera angles, like the camera like way like down here as someone would pass by, that didn't seem to have any bearing on the story. And it almost reminds me of like when someone who's a home filmmaker, you know, myself included, you know, if we don't have, you know, professional equipment, sometimes the tripod falls over and the camera's laying weird, or like if your hallway's not long enough to get a cool angle, you have to set your camera in a really weird spot. It kind of felt like that, so to me it immediately made me think that this movie had a little bit less professionalism than I would have thought. The other thing too that I really noticed was the color palette of this movie. It was very muted and it skewed quite dark with like almost muddy dark with a lot of dark grays and blacks and not a lot of color saturation, especially as the movie went on. It almost felt like the movie was in black and white at certain points, but then it wasn't. It was just the colors were so muted. So I personally did not like that. I think some people might enjoy it if that's your thing. I personally like colors to be a little bit brighter, or at least for there to be more value contrast between the shadows and the light sources. That said, there were a couple of really cool haunting images in this movie. There were certain shots that were framed in a really excellent way. So that kind of balanced it out, I guess, in my opinion. This movie had the benefit of a really expansive set that I thought was really well utilized. She's in this secluded house in the countryside somewhere, and you really got the feeling that it was this big empty house. You got to see part of the grounds that she was on, and of course you got to see parts of the city where she was before, like her publisher's office. So I thought they really did a good job of world building, and I found myself very interested in seeing more about the manor, so I really appreciated that. This movie utilized a lot of very traditional sound effects, you know, traditional music in the background and things like that that really added to the ambiance of the film. One problem though, however, is that the rest of the movie really did not have very good sound balancing at all, basically at all. The sounds within the film fluctuated between being like impossibly quiet and just bombardingly loud, and there didn't really seem to be any rhyme or reason to why it was that way. Sometimes movies that have really poor sound balancing, like, you know, the talking will be so quiet that you have to like crank your volume all the way up, and then, you know, someone will scream and you have to crank it down, and things like that. This movie, it wasn't even like that. It was like the volume would jump up in the middle of someone screaming. So I'm not sure if perhaps it was a problem with the digital file or if the movie was just really poorly sound produced. But either way, if you watch the version that I watched, be prepared for that. That really de-elevated the viewing experience for me, and a lot of the kind of spooky elements for me were lost because I would get so startled at the sound increase. So to me, it cheapened the scares that were present in this movie. The scares were fairly well spaced throughout this movie. It is a little bit of a slow burn, but I thought they did a really good job with the pacing, and I really have no complaints on that front. For the most part, I thought the actors and actresses were pretty good. My problem, unfortunately, was with the main actress's performance. I hesitate to say I disliked her acting because perhaps it was just extremely poor writing for her character, but her character was just extremely unlikable, and it came across like she was way overacting, but maybe she wasn't. Maybe the script was just really bad for her character. I kind of hesitate to blame the script, however, because typically if you have one bad actor, you have a lot of bad actors, and the others were fine in my opinion, so I don't mean to harp on her, but she really overacted, especially when she would be like, she'd be like, ah, ah, like, you know, like really fakey, ridiculous stuff. I don't know. Paula, the main character, her character just felt very flat. They kept harping on the fact that she was mentally ill at one point or had been in rehab or something. I don't remember what it was, but, you know, something where you have to, you know, go away from society for a little while, get your mind right, and then go back out. And they just kept harping on that, and that seemed to be her only personality trait. She was overly meek, and I don't know, it was just, she was so flat, whereas the other characters, who were arguably much more minor, felt like complete people to me. So I guess that is a problem with the writing, but her acting didn't help. Now I'm going to be discussing how this movie stands apart from or blends in with other films of the genre. Unfortunately, I will be spoiling this movie. I have to spoil the plot to explain my comparisons. So if you don't want any spoilers, please take this as your cue and leave now. It's been lovely having you. Paula is getting really concerned about Linda. Linda starts getting more aggressive and like shoving Paula. She kind of banishes the staff who are there and like yells at them in a really cruel way. The tabloid man shows up, and he's, you know, he's of course been bugging Paula, and he's a little bit unsavory, but whatever. And when he kind of barges his way in, Linda tells Paula, I'll handle this, and she goes out, and she seems to be charming him at first, and then he goes like, tell me what happened with you, and she's like, I'll tell you everything. And she pulls out some kind of, I don't know if it's a cord or what, I didn't see what it was. She walks up behind him and chokes him to death and goes, I killed a man because he raped me, ah, and then throws his body in the basement. Paula is aware of all this stuff going on. She calls her therapist. She's very upset. Obviously, she's like, I think Linda's gonna kill me. There's this woman, Linda, here. Please, please help me. The therapist grabs the publisher, and they drive out to their house. And he explains that actually what happened is that many years ago, when Paula was 13 or so, her brother began to rape her repeatedly. And of course, this was very horrible to her, and she she killed him in kind of a dissociative state, and she developed a split personality that she called Linda to kind of deal with the trauma, and that was one of the things he treated her for. So I don't know a lot about dissociative identity disorder or anything. I know that it's a very controversial topic, especially in how it's depicted in the film world. Of course, the famous example is the film Sybil. The ones most recently that have, to my knowledge, have most recently become kind of controversial are the M. Night Shyamalan films Split and then Glass. I've seen both of them. Of course, we can't take media depictions of this stuff seriously at all, but it's always good to kind of look at how other films depict this condition, just like on screen, to kind of familiarize ourselves. In Split, James McAvoy's character has multiple split personalities, and when we're seeing him, because we're not seeing it from his perspective, we're seeing it from someone else's perspective viewing him. It's just him changing his mannerisms and such. In this one, because we're seeing it from Paula's perspective, you see Paula and then a completely different actress who looks completely different from Paula, not the same hairstyle, not the same physique, not anything, who's playing Linda, and you see them kind of interacting with each other. I thought that was a really cool way to kind of make it more of a surprise and a plot twist. I thought it was kind of a cool metaphorical example of showing the two parts of her at war with each other. Unfortunately, it kind of made everything fall flat when it kind of came to the conclusion, because you see, the way it was set up didn't make sense. For example, when the tabloid man drives up to the house and Linda lets him in, starts talking to him, he says to her, you know, "Oh, you know, you're much prettier than your picture. Oh, you look quite different." And she says something like, "Oh, makeup can do wonders," or whatever. That's someone in the story acknowledging that they look completely different, so it doesn't really make sense that in the end, you know, for us who have suspended our disbelief to believe that it is the same person. I thought it would have worked better if they'd maybe done a flashback and Paula had done her hair differently and was like carrying herself in such a distinctly different manner, and we saw that actually that's what he was seeing or something, but they didn't do that. And they've showed the other characters interacting with Linda and Paula at the same time. So I think it kind of fell flat in that way. For any kind of, you know, it's all in your head, or like, oh, this is you but a different version of you thing to work, a story needs to establish that that character is interacting with the main character, but the other people in the story, the real people, are not interacting with that person while the main person is present. Basically, I think it was kind of a cinematic fail to depict it that way. I thought it was a cool concept, but the little clues leading up throughout the movie did not make sense. If I had to rate this movie, I would not rate it very highly, unfortunately. I would give it maybe a 2 out of 5. The main actor, the actress who played Paula, her acting was just, it was so overacted and just cringy at certain parts. Like, I know that's, you know, not a professional term, but it just cringed me out. I thought the other actors and actresses were good though, just not her. And because she is the main character, she's carrying most of the movie, especially the parts when she's completely alone in the mansion. It's like, you know, the movie's gonna suffer. And especially like the sound mixing, but that was unpleasant as well. The production value just overall felt not as polished as it should have been for something of this scale. Let me know what your thoughts are, especially what are your feelings on dissociative identity disorder, split personality disorder, multiple personality disorder, all of those terms. What do you think about their place in films? I know that they're a very controversial topic, especially in the wake of that reality documentary series. Please let me know what you have to say. Have you seen this movie? Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? Did you see the ending coming? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure having you. I hope this review was helpful and enjoyable to you, and I hope that if you like this video, you will like it, and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more. I do review horror movies on this channel. I like them, other people like them, let's review them, you know. Anyway, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day, or night, or afternoon, or morning, whatever. I don't know when you're watching this. Okay, thank you, bye.